Welcome back to Sponge Heresy. Today we are going to be taking a stab at the White Scars. The Khan's speedy boys. So start with a Rattlecan black and then a Zenithal highlight of white. And then using Mournfang Brown and our sponge, I sponge that over quite a bit of the area to give some underlying dirt and almost like a rusty base that's going to show through quite nicely when we start tackling the white. Using Toothing Coat's White Star, pretty watered down, and on our sponge I am sponging on the white paint, paying more attention to the top areas of the armour, being a little heavier in those areas with that white so you get more coverage. Down towards the bottom of the armour you need to apply it less because that's going to give you more of a natural shadow. It's going to give you more texture as well on those areas. They're going to get more battered and bruised and, you know, beat up when you're on the battlefield. Once you are happy with your white, obviously you can put that on heavier or lighter depending on your preference. It's all about filling the details. So for the red, I use the Citadel Mephiston Red and I apply that to the trim of the armour, to the bottom part of his helmet, to one of the knee pads. Now obviously there are specific squad markings and what have you can do for the White Scars, and some amazing patterns and stuff that I've seen on miniatures all over Instagram. There's one guy, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, did some amazing like cherry blossom tree artwork down the side of his vehicles, and it's honestly stunning. But again, this is a quick, simple, speed, grimdark-esque paint scheme. Then for the trim around the top of the helmet, I use Toothing Coat's Glistening Gold. And for the metal parts on the bolter, I use Vallejo's metal colour Gunmetal. And for the black, I use the Toothing Coat's black. Now, once that's dry and you've given that a decent amount of time to dry, I would probably say leave it overnight, or if you want to take a hairdryer to it just to make sure that the paint fully seals. I then bust out the trusty Dark Wash by MIG and I cover all of the miniature with that. A little heavier down towards the bottom of the model, again around the legs, those areas that are going to get dirtiest most when you're trudging across a battlefield. And then we let that dry. Once that's dry, take some clean mineral spirits and some Q-tips and start removing some of that enamel that's dried. So removing off those areas, especially focusing and removing more paint at the top of the model and those areas that are going to pick up the most light, and then removing a little less around the bottoms of the legs and kind of sitting in those cracks around the armour and the armour joints. And then again we let that dry. Now this is where you can either, if you want, push the highlights if you're not too happy with them. So I've gone back over with some Mephiston Red on some of the trims of the armour and reapplying the original colours that I put down over the top of the enamel. So those areas pop a little bit more, though you could push those highlights using brighter metallics, brighter reds, etc. What I then do to add a little bit of visual interest, and you don't necessarily need to do this, and this was more kind of showing you guys as an example of what you could do, is using the gunmetal from Vallejo almost as an edge highlight in areas that are going to get chipped and damaged quite a lot, and then using a sharp implement like this point that I've got from an airbrush cleaning kit and just scratching into the armour in certain places and bringing up that brown that's underneath and even sound to the black primer just to add a little more visual interest and texture. Alright, next up we are going to be looking at the Iron Warriors, so do make sure you give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a comment, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace!